when someone takes, is it osmocillin?
When someone takes Oslo, yeah.
You know, it's a lot of little tiny pellets
Right.
in a tube. And how do you know? I mean, I know how to do one pellet,
Right.
but
So the question is, when you get some remedies, and it's not just the Oslo, but it's other remedies where you have very tiny pellets, they're smaller pellets than the standard pellets that we use, how do you know how much to take? For most patients, unless you're very sensitive, it doesn't make a difference if it's a tiny pellet or a larger pellet, or if it's 2 pellets or 5 pellets. It doesn't make a difference. It's the same dose. That's for most people. A very sensitive patient may react a little more to 2 pellets than 1, but it's generally not a big deal.
so in theory, that one tube, because it usually comes in a pack that has multiple tubes. I mean, that could be an entire year, or, you know.
Right. You could use the way the way the pharmacies tell you to take it. You end up using up the remedy much quicker. You can prolong the life of your remedies by taking less. Or if you respond to wet doses, just 1 pellet in a glass of water and taking the wet doses, that'll last you for a long time compared to constantly taking the pellets and using them up so quickly. So yeah. The idea, the concept to think about in that sense is it's not the amount of the remedy you're taking, it's how often you're taking it. It's kind of like the remedy is basically just information that's being conveyed to the body. So if you think of it as information, like let's say a lecture on homeopathy, if you by taking 2 pellets or 3 pellets or 4 pellets, by taking more pellets, it's the equivalent of like the lecturer just talking louder. It's still the same information being conveyed. But if you attend that same lecture every day for 10 days in a row, it's going to enhance your learning, because you're going to, by the end, if you attend a lecture once, you're going to pick up maybe 80% and retain about 10 or 20% if you don't review it. Each time you review it, you retain a little bit more, right? So it's the same amount of information, but repeated more often is what makes it have more of an effect. Okay. So when a patient, but the more acute a patient is, the less chance they have of aggravating. So the more acute the condition, the more frequently you'll need to give the remedy, and with the less chance of aggravation. So in acute conditions, unless someone's really, really sensitive, we don't worry too much about aggravation. We are concerned about it, we think about it. We don't want to give too high a potency or give it too often. You watch for aggravations, but it's not very likely to happen in an acute case. What's more likely to happen is a quick relapse, especially the more aggressive the condition or the disease. We call it the ascendancy of the disease. Like in the case of let's say like acute bronchitis, or let's say acute headache. You go from having no pain to having an extreme amount of pain in a very quick period of time. So if you take a remedy as the disease, so this is what the disease is doing, this is what the symptoms are doing. You take it right here, it may help it a little bit, but it's going to want to come right back again. So you take it again, it helps, but it starts to come back. So you have to keep taking the remedy in order to get the symptoms to go down. Otherwise, it'll get worse, you'll take the remedy, it will go down. If you wait too long, it'll just shoot right back up again, and you'll be just kind of doing this, and it doesn't really get better unless you take the remedy more often, and eventually the symptoms will go down and go away. So the next letter on the outline is E, the follow-up and case management. This is basically the last step of the 5 steps in practicing homeopathy. So we have case taking, then 2 is case analysis, 3 is prescribing the best remedy or the simillimum, 4 is administering the remedy and how you administer it, or what potency, how often, all those factors. And then 5 is the follow-up and case management. So you have to judge the response now. So it's not just enough to give the remedy and say, like in conventional medicine, take this twice a day, until your symptoms are gone. It's take this remedy at whatever frequency you determine is the best, and now we have to follow up, and we have to assess is it working or is it not? Because the remedy might be working as it should be, or it might not be working, or you're not sure, there's other variables. So these are all the things we have to take into account. So in acute cases, one thing to consider is the response has to do with the duration of the symptoms. So the longer the symptoms have been there, the longer it's going to take for the patient to respond. The shorter the symptoms have been there, the quicker they're going to respond. So it's always best to treat someone, the sooner you treat them, the easier it's going to be. So if someone starts to feel like they're under the weather and they just start to have that sore throat, and you can get a good remedy in there right away, let's say they just had the sore throat for maybe an hour or two and they take the remedy, it could go away within minutes and not even come back. If they wait till it's raging, intense sore throat pain, it's been going on for a whole day or two, now we might be talking about minutes or hours for a response.
And that's the challenge, though, is having the supplies so that...
Right. So that's why I recommend to have the remedy on hand is really great. That's why I recommend in the essential information handout, there's a supplier that I use. They have really good kits of remedies, but it's called NHS, for Natural Health Supply, and their website is A2Z Homeopathy.com. That's letter A, the number 2, the letter Z, homeopathy.com. Their number is 888-689-1608, and they have travel kits or kits of remedies. So they have smaller vials of the remedy, but they'll have, you can buy them, the 25 most common remedies, or the 50 most common, or the 100 most common. There's some specifically, more for first aid. There's others that are geared more towards colds and flus. I recommend getting the kit with 100 remedies in it. For this class, the 30C potency is a good. If someone's really sensitive, you want to use maybe 6C, but for most people, 30C is a pretty safe way to go. And with 100 remedies, the chances of you needing the remedy in that 100 kit is probably, for any given condition, probably about 70%. So 70% of the time, if you have 100 remedies, you'll have the remedy you need. If you have a kit of 50 remedies, you're probably looking at like 50 or 60% of the time you'll have the remedies you need for your typical acute stuff. Again, back to the outline number 2 under judging the response. Any acute disease of 1 to 2 days duration should respond roughly within 12 to 24 hours, usually within 3 to 6 hours. If something's been going on a day or two, it's fairly acute, usually within 3 to 6 hours, in some cases within minutes. The more acute, the more severe the pain is or the condition is, generally the faster it will respond. But it may need more frequent repetition. So very acute, very severe, you may need to repeat the remedy every 30 minutes or every hour or every couple hours. And as it continues to improve, gradually kind of less and less. So it's always as needed though. If you tell someone, take the remedy every 20 minutes at first, but within 20 minutes they're feeling much, much better, well then slow it down. Then don't keep taking it. If you had a big, huge response, start to take it gradually, less and less often. You could wait for the symptom to just come back, and then take it again. But if you're seeing that the symptom keeps coming back, like every 2 hours, then don't wait a full 2 hours. Just wait about an hour, because you don't want it to keep getting better, then getting worse, then getting better, then getting worse. Especially if it's more of a severe or acute problem, like let's say you're treating otitis media, an ear infection, you don't want to wait for it to get worse again before you give another remedy. So you get a feel for maybe they take the remedy, they improve, but then the improvement kind of plateaus, they're not continuing to get better, so they got better right away in a half hour, but then for the next hour they're about the same, well then take it again, because they're probably just going to stay about the same and start to get worse again if you do nothing. So you kind of just get a feel for how often to take it. And again, there's guidelines in these books that I've recommended that are good guidelines to follow until you get more experience doing it on your own.